Hello, everyone. Welcome to Dragon Talk. How's it going? It's good to see you guys. I was out last week, and I'm back here.
I missed you.
In sunny Renton, Washington.
Is
exactly. We've got Shelly here, and we've got Mr. Matt Baume. Hello.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. We are excited to talk to you because you have awesome, fun stuff going on. I missed your show. I missed Queens of Adventure performing live in Seattle. Gosh, what was that? A week ago? 2 weeks ago?
It feels like forever. Yeah, I think it was like literally a week and a few days. But yeah. There'll be more. Don't worry.
How did it go? Was it fun?
It was great. Yeah. So the show is Queens of Adventure. We have drag queens playing Dungeons and Dragons for a live audience.
Best thing ever.
It is amazing. They are fantastic. Turns out drag queens really good at D&D.
They've got all the performance qualities that they need, right? Singing, dancing, and rolling dice.
Yep. And what we discovered is
rolling dice. Yeah. Every good drag show
Triple
involves
threat.
lots of rolling dice.
Well, that was one of the big challenges when we were doing the shows. We were talking to venues about like, oh, we want to do this show where drag queens play D&D, and they're like, oh, okay, here are all the performance, venue information.
No, wait, really? Was the response really okay? Or was it like, wait, what do you want to do?
There was a lot of what and like, well, I mean, mostly it was venues saying like, oh yeah, sure, of course, we understand it's a drag show, and we're like, no, but like, what sort of facilities do you have for rolling dice? And that's when the conversations got confused.
They're like, we know how to do drag. That's easy,
but now
easy
you're
peasy.
throwing in the dice, and now it feels weird.
That's a different thing.
Yeah.
It's a whole different animal. It is, right? Because you need the cameras to do the point down things, and having a table that is made for performing of Dungeons & Dragons on a stage is not a simple thing.
Well, we've tried a lot of different arrangements. So we have drag queens at the live shows. We have them sitting on stools. They have these specially made music stands in front of them that have trays. Yeah. So because the shows involve a lot of getting up and down. It's not just straight D&D, and it's not just straight drag. So there's a little bit of lip sync, a little bit of dice roll, a little bit of improv, a little bit of games.
A little bit of lip sync too?
Oh, of course there's lip syncs. We've got drag queens. Why wouldn't we have them lip sync?
Oh my God, I love this so much.
It's pretty amazing.
This
it's pretty
is the
amazing.
best thing ever. Okay, there's so many questions.
There are so many questions, but let's go back to the beginning.
Yes,
let's go back to when did you start playing D&D? Is it recent? Is it late? Is it when you were a kid?
Is it true that your first time DMing was on stage?
Yes.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Yeah, my first time as DM was on stage for 100 people, so no pressure whatsoever.
Yeah, oh my God.
Yeah. My very first tabletop experience was probably when I was like 11, and it didn't go so great. So I had a friend who was like, let's get into D&D, and literally it was like an hour of him just like reading the manual silently to himself, and like, this isn't so fun. So
it was just the two of you?
It was just the two of us.
Read
silently.
I don't think we knew exactly what we were doing or what we were getting into.
Yeah, but that was before streaming and watching people play is such a large part of the community now, and like that's what we hear time and again is that people, once they saw it occurring, you're like, oh, I get it now. That's what I needed. That was the missing piece. So I totally sympathize with let's just sit and read these books and figure something out.
So that I came back to it like many years later. For like a long time, my partner James and I have been talking about like, it was just a joke at first, like Dungeons and Drag Queens, wouldn't that be funny? And then when 5th edition came out, we were noticing like this really seemed to hit with like streamers and podcasts and stuff. Yeah. This is really like, there's something very performative about this. And at the time we were living in LA, and we were very lucky to have a group of queer nerds around us who were very into role-playing games, and I was also working with a lot of drag queens.
Doing what?
So I work for a bunch of LGBT news outlets. So I write for The Advocate and Rolling Stone and NPR and Vice Magazine. And I also photograph drag shows a lot. So nice. I just go out like 11 p.m. is roughly when my workday starts. So, I go out with the camera to whatever drag show and hope that I'm not going to get splattered with fake blood or whatever gag they have in their act.
Right. This is a new. So I've like many folks, I've watched some RuPaul Drag Race, and that kind of was my first glimpse into this whole world. But then someone else showed me something which hasn't been represented as much on that show, which was and it was in the LA scene. It's like monster drag.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I was like, oh, of course D&D and drag, these communities kind of, it got married in my head then.
Yes.
Right? So what is monster drag for people like Shelley who doesn't,
It is fantastic. So there's this show called Dragula that is sort of drag race but scary. And so one of our queens in the San Francisco cast, Erica Clash, was on Dragula. And so it's basically just... drag but weird. So, if you can imagine, like one of the ways that D&D and drag overlap in a very fun way is that there's different sort of classes of drag. So your drag class can be pageant, or it can be comedy, or it can be monster, or there's all these different types of
like subgenres.
Yeah.
So, for example, Erica Clash, who's in our San Francisco cast, she does this sort of like her makeup. She does this great thing where her mouth is drawn on in a way that extends all the way down to her neck, so it looks like she's got this giant gaping maw of teeth. That takes up her entire head. And Arsa Nikki, who's in our Seattle cast, she does a lot of very what am I looking at kind of drag. So she was in a ball here a few years ago where literally the category that she was in was, what is it?
Oh.
So like every time they announce the category, they're like, and coming up next, what is it?
Yeah, I feel like that would be my category.
That's a pretty good category.
Like every time I try to actually do like a smoky eye or something, I would totally be in the what is it category.
It's neither smoky nor an eye.
Nope. What did she do?
It looks like charcoal.
Lean in, make it work, go with it.
Yeah,
that's the character.
Yeah. But some of the monster drag that I've seen is like very, like it leans into horror tropes, right? Where there's very much, like you said, like fake blood, or like, a person is actually like a python or something like that. Like doing things that you're like, whoa, that's amazing. But then they also sing and or dance in character as the monster, which that made me very, 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 very laugh a lot because it's good stuff.
Yeah. You saw this?
I saw a show, and I'm forgetting the name of it, but it had boys in the title. I think it was some kind of like I forget what it was, but it was a friend of mine who turned us on to it after we were watching some RuPaul Drag Race. She's like, "Oh, you got to check this out. This is really, really interesting, crazy stuff." And it was. It really was. And I was like, oh gosh, now I want to see like Beholder drag, and more Dragonborn, like all kinds of crazy stuff drag would be really good.
Well, we've really tried to incorporate into Queens of Adventure like a lot of that kind of stuff. So like we've got a tiefling alchemist, and whenever we do the live shows, she's got the horns and she's got a tail, and we want to definitely marry those two those two Venn diagram circles of drag and D&D.
Yeah.
It turns out like you could just like push them all the way together, so they're just one circle.
I love that.
The diagram becomes a circle.
Just a circle. So how did the first Queens of Adventure start?
So we were living in LA, and then we're just like kicking this idea around, like how can we make this work? We want to make sure that like performers get paid, so like it's not just like, hey, would you do this fun thing for free? Because drag queens are professional working artists. Right.
And that's a lot of supplies, a lot of things that go into making all the stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So we were like, oh, should it be like a web video thing or a podcast or live show, or what should it be? And then when we moved to Seattle, that's when things started to crystallize for us, because we were listening to a lot of the Adventure Zone, which really helped me understand, okay, here's how this can be a show. And then I was very fortunate here to meet a lot of drag queens who were, I think the Seattle drag scene is very experimental in like the most literal sense of like it's a laboratory. Like people are trying stuff and like, I don't know if that would work. Let's see what happens.
Right.
So I was very lucky to meet Arsa Nikki, Freya Love, Butalino Kipple, Harlotte Oscara.
That's the best name, by the way.
Harlotte Oscara. Yeah.
I love it.
Harlotte, in fact, has been playing D&D forever. She had the Dungeons & Drag Queens Instagram handle before we even started talking.
Oh, nice.
Really?
Yeah,
so she's like, I'm ready to go. This is what I've been waiting for.
Oh, yes.
I knew if I built it, they would come.
And so finally, like, I was like, okay, we've been talking about this forever. Can we just like give this a shot and see what happens? Right. And so it was during PAX West in 2017 that we're like, let's just do a live show.
It's not that long ago.
Yeah. At Kremwork, it was a Timber Room here in Seattle. Let's just see what happens. And we took a few months to work out the logistics, and took a few months for me to be like, okay, I wasn't into D&D when I was 11. Let me try it again.
Yeah.
And
as the DM.
I know. It's a little terrifying.
Yeah.
Also because I was traveling at the time, all last summer, I was working in Europe, like literally going like 1 week to the next from one city to another, covering Pride all through the summer in Europe.
Oh, cool.
So I was traveling, and literally I was like, I have this vivid memory when I was in Barcelona, 2 a.m., outside the Barcelona train station, which I didn't realize like closes and locks at night, so you can't go in. Like it's not a 24-hour train station. So I get there and I'm like, oh, I guess I'm waiting for like 6 hours in the dark in the middle of the city. So like just sit down with my luggage surrounding me, like reading the DM guide, like just flipping through.
Oh my god!
Trying to get up to speed.
And Barcelona kind of looks like a fantasy city, I would imagine, even at night.
Yeah, there's a lot. I forget the architect's name, but there's that like very distinctive architecture of like yes, like
it looks
weird,
like melting sand.
Yeah, all the tiles and everything.
Yeah.
It was this very otherworldly landscape.
That could be very inspiring.
Yeah,
it was. Let me just crack this book open.
Good place
and
for all you new aspiring DMs.
Right.
Yeah.
Go to the train station, Barcelona.
Easy peasy. I've said that like 4 times. So everything is easy peasy. It's
You're just coming off vacation, so
it's true.
You're still in that like zen mode.
It is true. On when you're camping, it's always like, oh yeah, no problem. Things get done. We'll figure it out. We'll make a fire no matter how we can. Yeah. So I'm in that mode. You're right. You're totally right.
Easy peasy mode.
Easy peasy mode.
So when you conceived of the idea, was it always with you as the DM, or was it that you didn't have another option?
I don't know. So yeah, like I and I also had a very unfair advantage in that my partner James is he's worked in the games industry for a long time. He's been playing D&D forever. He did like as a kid he was playing Advanced Dungeons and Dragons and like incorporated RuPaul into his game when he was young. And so like,
really?
Yeah.
How do you do that?
I don't know. I think he just had RuPaul as like an NPC at one point.
That's pretty cool.
We need to stat up RuPaul.
How have we not?
I don't know, but that's amazing.
Yeah.
So he was helping me learn like furiously, like remotely, like, okay, read this chapter.
He didn't want to be the DM? Did
you
ask him?
So, he's very much the background guy who's like presses the buttons and pulls the levers and he writes all the adventures.
Oh, cool.
And so I'm the kind of the two of us on camera.
No, I'm realizing on the doc there were 2 names.
Yeah.
Okay. He's the other one.
Yeah, so he's the brains behind the outfit, and I just look nice. No,
I'm just the pretty face.
Yeah, I'm just a face.
That's how Greg and I are.
It's true.
He's the brains behind everything.
I thought I was the face. Damn it!
I want to be the face.
All right.
You always get to be the face.
Fine, you can do it. Go for it. That's cool. Yeah. So then he gave you some pointers. Then you're like, all right, now I gotta.
I did a lot of play testing just to figure stuff out. And the thing that really crystallized it for me was Phandalin. Like reading Lost Minds of Phandelver, I was like, okay, rules I get them here. They're a little streamlined. Pre-generated characters, I get it. There's a very it's basically a great tutorial for learning. And I was like, okay, now I think I feel ready. In hindsight, I super was not, but I felt ready.
Better, though.
Yeah.
You're like, I want to go up on stage.
As long as you feel ready.
That's really it. Like, Jeremy Crawford always talks about like if you're having fun, then you're following the rules.
Right.
And that's super like how it felt when we did that first live show. Looking back, I'm like, oh, I'm breaking all the rules here, but we're having fun.
Like you have to. Like I've only had a couple experiences DMing, and one was horrible, and the other one was better. But not great, but better. Mm-hmm. But the first one, I didn't feel ready at all, and it was sort of like self-sabotaging. Like I went into it knowing like I don't know what I'm doing. Oh God, this is going to be a disaster. But I also believed I had to know everything.
Yeah.
And then the second time, I was like, I don't know, but I'm the DM, and I can just make it up if I don't know. And then it was like way more freeing, and it was way better.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess it is all about just how you perceive it. I'm ready.
In drag and in D&D, just believe in yourself. And
there you go.
It's actually it's in life
positive.
too. Just make it till or fake it till
you
you make it.
Till you make it.
That's right.
Yeah. So was it when you were DMing? This is like there's DMing around the table, and then there's DMing in front of an audience. So did you do any did you watch any live streams to see, is it different for you, or do you DM? Is this the only time you DM?
No. Well, so I've done like little practice sessions and like games with friends and things since then. And yeah, it's super different. So we have the live shows, and we also have a podcast, a Queens of Adventure podcast, which is super different from the live shows.
Yeah. Say which cast is in the podcast then? Is it the Seattle cast?
Yeah, so it's the Seattle cast, and then the San Francisco shows, and we also did a show in LA. Those are peppered into the feed as bonus episodes.
Cool.
So we did a Kickstarter for the podcast, and you can be supported on Patreon. So backers get some of the bonus episodes, live shows as bonus episodes.
Nice.
Yeah. So it's the San Francisco's a bonus episode. Seattle is the podcast cast.
Okay.
And so they come over and we play D&D for a little while and record. But what we found is like with the live shows, we're very intentional about giving them reasons to get up and move around and do stuff.
So is it James?
Yeah.
Okay. So when James writes the adventures, it's kind of almost like writing a play. Like there's blocking or things that you have to.
Yeah, it's
key moments when they are getting up and
exactly, and and of course we can't like railroad, and we can't be like, okay, well this is the moment when they have their climactic revelation, So
here's the dance number that we choreographed ahead of time.
That looks spontaneous.
So we just have we have lip syncs planned in, we have some like challenges planned in, like sometimes it's a little game like a ring toss, or sometimes it's a game where we gave them some. Adult novelties and had them do a puppet show with them.
Nice.
And I'm trying to. There's like a drawing challenge where like you have 60 seconds to draw someone in the audience with lipstick.
That's awesome.
We brought out an inflatable kiddie pool full of props and like, okay, you have 60 seconds to put together a look and do a runway. And these are all incorporated into the D&D. So like, okay, you're in this dungeon and you have to impress the gods of this dungeon by doing this catwalk down a narrow plank. And if your look isn't good, you'll be thrown off into the pit.
Oh my god.
Okay, so they end up almost the games and the lip syncs too, to some extent, become almost like an RNG type thing, like the random number generator.
Yeah. They're definitely. It's not just like stop everything to a lip sync. Yeah. The lip sync is a part of the combat that they're in.
Oh yeah.
And so for the podcast, we can't do like physical challenges quite the same way, but it also gives us the opportunity to do things that, the live show is 2 hours, and then we have 2 hours to do an entire adventure. So with the podcast, we can spend more time and have like an ongoing thing, and build the world. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The character stuff.
And they don't know what's happening in the live game, so they don't know what their challenges are going to be.
They have no idea what they're walking into. We've told them to lip sync like the songs ahead of time. Like, okay, you're gonna. We've done. We haven't done Holding Out for a Hero, but like we're saving that for when we're really.
Oh my god.
When we're going to need it, but so we tell them like what songs they're going to be doing. But they don't know anything else. And sometimes we'll throw in like, and there's going to be a surprise lip sync that you're just not going to know. So be ready for that.
Oh, man.
Nice.
Yeah. That's got to be so good.
So it's almost like, you kind of melded kind of the drag race game show feel with a Dungeons & Dragons game. And then each of them having their own character that they've been creating for the streams as well, too.
Exactly.
It's kind of ingenious. Mm-hmm. I love it.
Yeah, well, and that's when we invited them to be a part of the show. At first, the drag queens were like, wait, what?
That was one of my questions, too. How did you get this cast?
I'm super fortunate to know a lot of folks who do like performance here in Seattle. There's just an amazing theater scene here. And so in my photography, like it started off with me just going to shows and photographing them. And then I got to know the queens. And then I was like, okay, we want to do the show. Who are good people who like comedy queens who can be on a mic and make stuff up, but are also kind of nerds so that they, can get into the reality of it, not be just like, oh, this is dumb, this is lame, I'm making fun of it.
Because that would kill it, I think. If there is even just a hint of, some you can make fun of it a little bit, but like, I think that would be a little bit deflating to be like, I like Dungeons and Dragons.
It's fun when you laugh with it, not at it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we were super lucky to find. I think it started with Harlot O'Scara because she's just like a known.
She's been playing for a long time.
Big, gamer. Yeah. And in fact, she's a costume designer, and the way that she learned to be a costume designer as a kid was she was drawing the characters in her of her friends, and she would just draw their armor and costumes and everything. And now she makes costumes for a living.
That's is
amazing.
super cool, right? And that's how a lot of the artists that work on Dungeons & Dragons, get started, or at least hone their craft, is by drawing things at the table and things like that.
Yep. Next time we do a live event and need costumes, you should call Harlot. Harlot.
Yeah.
And then others are
this D&D musical idea.
Oh my God! It's every week there's like a new development.
I want to hear everything about this because I've been listening on Dragon Talk. Like, okay, yes, please do that. Please do that.
Yes,
we have to. It won't be long. I don't think it'll be like 5 or 6 songs at the most. Just get like a 1-act musical.
Holding Out for a Hero has to be.
Holding Out for a Hero. We're just gonna have to get the rights, but other than that, we'll track them down.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
Silly. Maybe we'll do a parody of it, and then done and done. It's fair use. Fair
I can
use.
do that.
Yeah.
I can do that.
You can do that.
I'm a good rhymer.
People know from the last episode that you are very good at rhyming.
Not under pressure. I mean, but give me some time and I will come up with it.
How's
Casual
your
rhymer?
Casual rhymer. Yeah.
How's your lip syncing for songs that aren't Hall & Oates?
I lip sync all the time.
Nice.
I do. Because I'm not a good singer. So I am sparing humanity from actually hearing the sound. But I love to lip sync.
The sound of your voice that only millions of people listen to every week.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I always assumed that Ryan just like filtered it somehow, and like I either sound like a monster. Like that's what people hear.
That's what you hear when your voice comes out of your mouth. You're like, oh, it sounds like a monster every single time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So monster drag might be perfect too.
That would actually be good.
The smoky eye, the lip syncs.
Yeah, I can do my own makeup for monster drag.
Yeah,
nice.
Everyone has a little bit of a drag queen in them waiting to come out.
I wish I had more, to be honest. I'm just enamored with that community.
Good. It is super fun.
Yeah.
And so creative, and like the performers that we have are so like, they're just giving 100. They're just going for it.
So were they D&D players other than Harlot?
No.
So they all learned recently too?
They literally, Freya came into it. She was like, oh, okay, this is going to just be your standard drag show. And, I'm going to pick out a song and do a lip sync to it. And that's the end. And like literally came to the show, was expecting that. And we're like, here's your binder.
Oh, no.
She came to
Here's all
the
your
show?
spells.
Yeah, well, we had a little meeting beforehand for everybody to play. And I think that's when she realized, like, oh, this is something different. This is not what I thought it was going to be. But she literally, I went to her and was like, would you do this? And she's like, yeah, sure. And afterwards she was like, I just said yes to a gig. I didn't know.
And is she in it now? Like, does she love it?
She is amazing. She is our wild card. She is the one who, like, we're designing the adventures and we're like, okay, well, Freya isn't going to remember this one little detail from like 5 episodes ago. And, immediately she'll be like, this reminds me. Or, she'll do stuff like, she was unconscious at one part in the adventure, and I'm like, okay, your eyes flutter and open, and what do you do? And she's like, I'm going to look around and see if there's any drag material that I can just get on my body, because like all of her drag had been washed away. She's like, all right, I'm going to just go through this closet. And like immediately she is like describing all of the like stuff that like the seaweed, and I'm going to fashion like a top for myself out of an octopus. And she's,
my God.
Immediately she has no idea exactly what's coming, but she's like, I'm just
open.
Reacting.
And I need to look good for whatever's coming up next.
Very important. Very important.
Yes, that's the number one rule of drag queen D&D.
That's true. So.
But how do you look?
Wait. So I guess I missed this part, and I would have. I apologize again for not seeing the show, because I would have known this ahead of time. But are the characters in the fantasy also drag queens?
So we have a world where there is where drag is a thing, but it's been kind of it's our heroes are sort of like carrying the mantle of drag for now in the adventure. There's not, they haven't encountered other drag queens. What they've encountered are figures of lost drag houses. So there was a character in the first adventure, Edith Wunderbread. There's another one named Trixie LaBouche in our second adventure. And these are long lost queens who relics of their houses are turning up, and they're very powerful relics. And so our heroes are on this mission to obtain them, track them down, and find out the secret of them, and also to get booked for gigs and not die of exposure, and have their treasure-seeking adventures that you need in a D&D experience.
Right. But it's about finding the lost secret of drag a little bit.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Right now in the podcast, they've washed up on an island that they were going to find. They've washed up on Fire Island, volcanic island.
Right.
Yeah.
It's underneath a very long island.
Yes. Right.
Good one, Tito.
I've been to Fire Island. I know.
Okay. So yeah. So there, we've got like in the live show, they were just on a beach where they had to find this temple that was in the shrubs of cruising, and so they're going on these adventures and looking for this like lost treasure, and they've got to find the scepter that's a key to opening the vault. And so we've worked in a lot of like lore, and this is what the podcast has allowed us to do, is like the live shows are fun one-shots, and the podcast is like an ongoing thing in a world that keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. I love that. And this is just, I didn't know it, but I loved how the meta nature of both the performers as themselves and as the characters,
Yeah.
and the strength of that community and the power of that community is also like working together like as part of the story. I love that so much.
Yeah, it's a really integral part of it is the feel of community.
Yeah.
Like we're all in this together. We're all doing our thing. This is something that Butylene said when we were talking about just like why do this show. She was like, when you're putting together a drag show, because Butylene and Harlot are real life partners, and they do a show called Family Meal. And so when they do the show, they're like, we want to make sure that everybody brings something different, and they all augment each other, and people fill in the gaps that other people have. And I'm like, well, you're just describing a party. Like
That's D&D.
That's how you put together a
right
party.
there.
Yeah.
So none of the other ones had played D&D other than Harlot?
No. So we had like a little preliminary meeting, and we bring out the binders, and we just ran the beginning of Phandelver. And we had the little goblin encounter, and immediately I was like, okay, this group is going to be fun because like Butylene at one point was saying like, okay, I'm going to use my potion of truth-telling to get this goblin to tell us like what they're after. And I'm like, okay, so you're going to, I'm like starting to narrate it and figure out the role. And I'm like, do you have a potion of truth-telling?
Oh, that's okay.
And she's like, no, but my character lies a lot. So not to the DM, but okay, I'll give you a point of inspiration for that. So here you go.
Oh, that's awesome.
So immediately they were like making stuff up, and they got like, okay, this is just a story that we're telling.
So did they know each other? I mean, other than the Harlot and her partner?
Yeah. So Harlot and Butylene are a couple, but then they've all worked together. Seattle drag scene is like really nice, and people work together a lot. Not having been said, there are also, like I was saying, there's like drag houses where like families and cliques form, and like there's sort of rivalries between drag houses.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. It's very... I mean, is
it like Hufflepuff and Slytherin and
very much.
Nice.
Well, yeah.
Like
Castellaners
right
and Yep. And there's also, comparable to like D&D elements. There's clerics in the drag community. There's the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. Do you know this group?
Yes, I have heard of them.
They're so they're basically like drag nuns, and they have like makeup, and they have like full like outfits, habits. And they are sort of the clerics of the queer community.
I'm feeling like this is our
they
musical.
come in to heal? Like, is that,
yeah. They come like, I mean, they have a lot of like different jobs, but like they do like education and outreach, but also like if there's some trauma in the community, for example, there was some crime when I lived in San Francisco. There was some crime that was going on, and so they would have these like cleansing ceremonies where they would gather and they would like have a little ritual, and they would say some words, and the community would like have an opportunity to have sort of an emotional cleansing of whatever community trauma was happening.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I love that. Mm-hmm. Now we need some paladins and
yeah, gosh, who are the like? I'm trying to think of now of like who are the like classes that map onto the gay community.
Right, exactly.
Did you give them all characters to play, or did they make characters?
It was collaborative. So basically, what we do when we go to any of the drag queens that we're working with is we start with just who are your favorite fictional characters.
Yeah.
And so a lot of them will choose like Chun-Li, for example, or Bayonetta, or like they'll talk about like video game characters who are exciting to them. It's very frequently like strong women who like drag queens are really inspired by. And so then we'll work with them and be like, okay, so you like magic characters, or like you like brawling, or like Pollo Del Mar, who's in our San Francisco cast, is also a professional wrestler.
Chicken of the Sea?
Yes.
Which is a LA Story joke, if I'm not mistaken, from Steve Martin's LA Story. They go to a resort called Pollo Del Mar.
Yeah, I think you're right.
It was one of those stupid throwaway jokes in a silly movie, but I love it. Drag always brings those out. And they're like, here's one little phrase that you might have rememred from something 30 years ago. And they're like, we'll make a name about that.
Yeah, exactly. So Pollo is, she's a professional wrestler in addition to being a drag queen.
Oh.
So of course.
A lot of D&D in the wrestling community we're learning.
I know, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's putting
Again,
on a
lot
show.
of
Bring it all
crossover,
together.
Performance.
I didn't know. I was so, well, this is shifting tracks to wrestling, but like I didn't realize wrestling was so theatrical and dramatic until very recently.
You thought it was real?
No, I didn't think it was real. I just thought it was silly. I was like, I don't really get these stories that just didn't really seem to gel with me.
That's the part that I like about it.
Right. Well, then it wasn't until I started to watch like a little bit of it. I'm like, all right, I can see the appeal for this. And then it was that show Glow that actually connected. I'm like, all right, this is actually theater.
Yeah.
Way more than anything else.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
I didn't like the macho posturing of it. Just wasn't speaking to me. And then I was like, oh wait, this is like you said, this is a show. This is just drag of a different kind. This is, again, playing with gender in a very specific way.
Yeah, right. That's true. So now I want some crossovers between all of these communities to occur.
We made her a barbarian. Yeah. She's got the she literally came into the show and like literally with just a handful of feathers and she was like, the night of the show, she's like, I don't know what I'm going to do with these, but this is going to be part of my costume. And so if you look at photos of the show, you can see she's got this wild hairstyle of like feathers sticking out of her hair, and it's duct taped to her head.
Nice.
These feathers sticking up out of her hair.
Awesome.
And then it kept going from there. She actually
and the feathers everywhere. And
nice.
At one point
she embrace it.
Yeah, exactly. So I told her, like, at one point she was trying to grapple somebody and was successful, and I was like, okay, and demonstrate for me like you've subdued them and show me like just a victory pose. And I thought she was just going to demonstrate some like muscle pose or something. And she's like, okay, and she stands up, and now Pollo is a large drag queen. She's like 6 foot something and wearing enormous platforms. And I'm like, what are you going to do? And she tucks and she rolls like on stage.
Oh my God.
I'm like, oh God, we're going to get sued. Help. Yeah. And like springs up into this like pose, and audience goes wild, of course. It was amazing.
Yeah. But it was like a wrestling move in a drag queen show that was playing D&D.
Oh,
yes.
Worlds colliding.
I know, right?
Colliding and colliding.
So many skills at work there.
Yeah, unfortunately, there were no injuries.
So how did the San Francisco and LA cast come about? Because again, you've only been doing this since like September?
Last September,
yeah.
So we just like reached out here to people I knew in Seattle to be like, who would be into this? And we found a great cast. And then in San Francisco, we were going down. The Game Developers Conference was happening.
Oh, yes.
And we're like, okay, let's do a show during GDC and see if that works. And so I used to live there, and so I just reached out to Peaches Christ, who's does a lot of like horror drag down there, and a few other people.
Christ.
Yes, she's great. She's
that was like 10 seconds later.
She's been doing drag like forever, and she had a show. She had like Midnight Mass there that she did with Martini and a few other like drag queens who are in the community, and so she knows everyone. And so she put me in touch with Heklina, who owns a drag venue called Oasis. That's just a dream come true. She bought this place that used to be a bathhouse, and then it was a car, like a garage.
Wow.
And so the pool of the bathhouse became where they would like go underneath to work on the bottoms of cars. And now that got like filled in and covered up, and now that's where the audience sits. So like there are all these like, if this floor could talk. Stories. But anyway, so we did Oasis, and it was just a dream because Peaches and Heklina and everybody got us in touch with the community there and introduced us to, we've got a queen in the show named Kai Kai B. Michaels, who, Kai Kai is a term for when drag queens make out with each other. So yes, so her name is Kai Kai B. Michaels, and she's a maker, and so she like does a lot of like mechanical components of her costumes. Like she's got a staff that lights up.
Oh.
I know, it's so cool. And Kitty Powers, who's also in the show, is a British drag queen who just happened to be in town for GDC, but we knew her just through the nerd world. And so we invited her. She's actually a drag queen who runs her own game company.
You're kidding.
I thought she was just like someone who was hired to be the face of the company. And then it's like, oh no, she's the CEO.
Nice. She hired herself to be the face of her own company.
Basically.
Nice.
Wow.
Yeah,
I love that.
So she's the bard in the show, and she's going to be coming back. We're doing another show in San Francisco this month, and so she's coming back to be in that.
At the same place, right?
Yep, at Oasis.
So were they D&D players?
Kitty had done some because, like, she's a gamer. She runs a game company. She knows. But everyone else had just sort of like, they played games. They played some like JRPGs, but pencil and paper tabletop was pretty new to most of them.
Yeah.
I love
well,
it.
had they
just
seen?
did it.
Did they see the first performances that you had done in
yeah.
Seattle? And so like that, I love how that one leap that you took in getting this cast together now is going to hopefully have like ripples that continue out for years and years to come, right?
Yeah. And there's other like drag D&D groups now. There's a group in LA, a lot of other like Dragula people who do like some live streams. And the thing that really like crystallized it for me when I was learning and like trying to help other people understand, here's how I think you play. James and I were having this conversation about what it means to be a role-playing game. And the two pieces of that, role-playing and game, like those were the two pieces that I was like, oh, okay, it's a little of this and a little of that. It's a little bit of you make a person and you inhabit that person and you send them out into the world to see what they're going to do. And then it's the game. You have a toolbox of things, skills, and stuff you're good at. And you figure out how to use that role-playing and the game together to make stuff happen. And so that's when we see like drag queens doing crazy stuff. Like Harlot was fighting a Yeti, and she's like, okay, I'm going to use my slippers of spider climbing to climb up the side of the Yeti, jump off of him, grind my heel into his eye to blind him, and then land on the tree next to him and use my light cantrip to light it up like a Christmas tree.
Oh my God.
So I'm like, okay, there's going to be a bunch of rolls, but let's see what happens.
They're challenging you as a DM.
Oh, constantly. They're like, I'm going to do this. And I'm like, I'm looking at my dice and I'm like, what do I do?
Tell me, dice.
Yeah.
What do I do?
Speak to me.
Tell me, dice. What do I do?
But that's so, I mean, what I love about that, just a little quick anecdote, is that it involves so much imagination, but storytelling, and I knew exactly what was going on from one moment to the next. Very, very, very easily, right?
It's the theatrical side.
Yeah.
You can really, everything is a scene.
Yep.
And you're really maximizing every encounter there.
Yeah.
And that was just one event of an entire battle, right? But it's so vividly, and it's creative in a way that is not just, I'm going to hit it with my sword again for the third time.
We're very careful not to make it like, because, you know, I like that kind of play. I like when you're just like thinking hard about the numbers and rolling the dice and being strategic about like, you know, basically just surrounding somebody and hitting them with a sword a million times.
Right.
But we got a show to put on. So let's see
what
we can do.
What might be fun for the performers might not necessarily be fun for everybody watching in that regard, right? So let's make it, as big as it can be.
So that's when we have like Arson, for example. She's a warlock, and her pact weapon is a magic wand vibrator. And so
it's this one, right?
It's it's the one that's actually being held aloft in some of our podcast art.
Yes.
And so, like, they had a battle in an ice castle, and she realized, like, if she put her magic wand vibrator into like a crack in the ice, you could vibrate the ice apart.
Yes.
So, you know, that's where we're getting away from just like, I hit him.
Right.
You know,
I can create the right frequency to destroy the world.
Yes. That's the goal.
So you said you're more of a analytical player, or you know, and that must come in from, you know, being in the journalism kind of background and stuff a little bit, right?
Like I'm very like factual. I'm very just the facts, and so you know, it's a little bit of a departure for me, and I'm still very new to this. And I'm still like learning, and you know, every day I'm on D&D Beyond, and I'm reading the articles, which has been really helpful for like understanding classes and stuff.
Yeah, they've been fantastic that way.
Yeah, and so I'm still learning, and I still kind of like figuring out like as a player like what suits me best. You know, it's a lot of it is just figuring out like what is fun about this play style. So if we do like a combat heavy couple of like sessions, what do I like? What's fun about combat? Or if we do like socializing, what's fun about that? If we do exploration, what's fun about the exploration? So we're still kind of like in a
trying it out
process, figuring out like, and what are drag queens good at? Turns out they're great at everything.
Yeah, like what aren't they good at?
Yeah,
right.
So what has the response within the community been? Are there more people coming out, more queens coming out saying, "Hey, I can do that too"?
Yeah. There's actually there's been some queens on Drag Race like Dax ! Who are like big nerds, and so we would love to get more of those queens involved. When we did our show in LA, we actually did a panel at DragCon, which is the Drag Race convention, and Ben de la Creme was on that, who was like the breakout star of the last All-Stars season. And Ben had never played D&D, but we got her up there and we're like, okay, here you go. You're in an arena and you're fighting a centaur. No, it was a Medusa character. And what do you do? And she's like, okay, well, I'm going to try to shrink her and, you know, all this stuff. But anyway, so so we've got like all these different casts going on, and we've got all these different queens playing. And so we just want to, you know, emphasize like, this is for everybody. Like there was a long period where I was sort of like lost in the wilderness, like, oh no, it's not for me. It's too many numbers.
Right. And
you know, you just find the right point of entry, and you're like, oh no, wait, everyone can have fun with this.
Yeah, and it doesn't. Well, I feel like we've been saying this over and over again. It doesn't matter what like walk of life you come from. Like you can get something out of playing a role playing game of some sort, right? Where it's like you have a different persona, and then you're playing something that requires strategy and critical thought, and just those two elements together like have so much power for storytelling and for helping people and getting you out of your head when, as you said, the world is crashing down around you. But you're like, I just want to, you know, get the magic sword and slay the dragon tonight.
Do some self-care
with my friends.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
And then you can take it all off, and like this is something Arson said. She's like, just like drag, I could just like take it all off and like go back to my normal life. But I know what I did. I knew I killed a dragon.
Yes.
Yeah.
And everybody,
keep it with you in your everyday life.
100 of my closest friends know.
Yes. Yeah, now they know. Secret is out.
Yeah, so what's the audience reaction? Like, who are the people coming to the shows?
It's been great, and like really like diverse audience, which is like a real pleasure. So when we do it at Kremwork here in Seattle, and also at Oasis, and when we did it at DragCon, what we're finding is it's a lot of people who do not frequently go to drag shows, which is super exciting.
Yeah.
Really happy to have folks. It is not, it's not all one monolithic group of people. So we're seeing like a really broad cross section of people some people who've never played D&D before and they don't know what they're getting into, but they know they like drag queens. Other people are big drag fans and they're like, what are they doing with dice? Okay, I guess I'll go with this. And other people who just don't go out much to live shows, but they're like, well, this I gotta see.
Yeah.
So a lot of like all genders, all levels of interest, all like ages and backgrounds and things. It's been a really. It's what I like about our audience is you see people together who do not look like they would be at the same show together,
right.
And yet there they are.
That's kind of D&D too.
Yeah.
That's what I like about D&D.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Yeah.
So we, always want to, give them a good show. And like at the last show, for example, we had a challenge where the queens were assembling s'mores to pass out to the audience. So here you go, everyone in the audience. Here's a little treat. Thank you for coming. So really want to be responsive to the people who are coming to the show.
Is there any audience interaction with them other than like the s'mores and?
Yeah. So we have a couple things. One is like when the queens have advantage or disadvantage, we have giant foam dice and the audience rolls the second die.
Oh,
I love
that's
that.
cool.
So often the audience will either save or doom one of the players. We also have paddles that people can hold up to add one or subtract one from dice rolls.
Oh.
So if someone's like real close, you rolled a 12, people in the audience can get together and everybody can hold their things up and be like, okay, 13, 14, 15, okay, we're there.
Oh.
Yeah. So
nice.
Jeremy Crawford was telling me about this, and he was like, we got to figure out that that was the one mechanic that he was like, oh, that is so awesome because you get the call and response from the audience and the performer so much that like there's negative ones too that you could also, and so if they want to like troll someone who'd be like, oh no, you failed that amazing thing and do that.
Exactly, because it's fun to see people fall on their face sometimes.
Right.
We just had a combat like on the podcast where oh, bless their hearts. They like were getting ready to do this like big combat on a beach defending a cabana. And, one of them is like, does the cabana come with a cabana boy?
Yeah.
And I wasn't planning on it, but I mean, now that you've asked, yes. So I had
the stakes are changed.
So we generated, like I just had an NPC there who they were going to try to persuade to join them in the fight. And oh boy, their plans for like conscripting this poor elf into their gang, like their ideas were creative and their roles were terrible.
Oh, it's a terrible combination.
Yeah. But it was super fun to see like them constantly trying, and no spoilers, but they're constantly trying to get this elf to join them and failing in ways that I could not even have imagined.
That's the best. You can't script that stuff. That's even better.
You really can't. Yeah.
I love it.
Although I kind of wish that you would, that James would put these adventures up on like DM's Guild or something, because I want to play in an adventure where I'm going to be forced to lip sync or to make a costume or to draw somebody.
So we
These
are
great
actually,
ideas.
we do have plans with the Kickstarter. The Kickstarter that we did for the podcast did really well. And so we were able to set aside a little bit of resources to hire some artists to illustrate an adventure. So this isn't out yet. It's still in the works, but we are going to have a playable adventure that people can get and download.
No way.
That's cool. I like the idea of it too, of it being, so many of the adventures that our published are out there are just you can use it however you want. But an adventure that is designed specifically for performance or streaming or something like that.
It's like party D&D.
Yeah, right?
That's a great way. Yeah, that's exactly the vibe that we want. Party D&D.
It's party D&D.
Yeah.
Like,
You could play categories or you could play this.
We're gonna do we're gonna do party D&D tonight.
Yeah.
We had a challenge in the last live show where we had. It was basically a spelling bee where they're like they were given like a little passage about like started with the bugbear, like this bugbear character did so and so thing, but the word bugbear is missing from an inscription. They have to write it in. Okay, that's easy. They wrote in bugbear. Next, there was a passage about an aarakocra. And so they're like, and so the audience had to like shout out how they think aarakocra is spelled.
Oh,
yeah,
that's really good.
Those C's and K's, they'll mess you up.
Yes.
True.
Lots of D&D words.
Yeah.
Ugh, the apostrophe.
I
Culminating
know, right?
in,
What's it now? This dragon name. It's got 5 apostrophes, 6 X's,
37 consonants
a
in a
Y.
row.
Yeah. Well, and it culminated in Sverfneblin,
which is very hard to say, let alone spell.
Exactly. So, so there's a lot of like clamoring from the audience, like, and that felt very much like a party game.
Did someone?
Yes.
It would be my dream to then write in deep gnomes. That's how you say it. That's how you spell it in my world.
I would, as DM, I think I would have you fail, but I would still give you a point of inspiration.
Nice.
The way we do inspiration there is we just treat them like Chuck E. Cheese tokens, where you can like collect them and you have them and you can use them.
It would be awesome
many as you
if
want.
like you actually had a ticket machine that like spit out inspiration like at Chuck E. Cheese.
We literally have little coins, and I give them coins, little inspiration coins. Here you go, so you remember how many you have.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
We have some extra coins for you that you can add to the rotation.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Are you in costume when you DM?
Sometimes. So usually, I want the drag queens to be the focus of, the center of attention. So I'm not going to compete with the drag queens. Are you kidding me?
That's good advice for anyone.
So I'm usually kind of like in a Tweety Professor outfit. We did have like a cruise, it was a mystery set on a cruise ship, where I was like in a sailor costume, feeling very cute.
Captain
Nice.
Stubing.
Yeah. Yeah, but usually it's all about the queens.
Isaac, maybe. Captain Stubing.
I mean, he was like the lead, right?
He was the cap. Like,
Yeah.
he was like a.
He had the
a
most
dad.
romantic things that were going on, though, right? Didn't
Captain Stubing.
like?
They weren't allowed to interact with
I think they were just the background. They were like, it was always the guests, right?
Doc,
I guess that's
Gopher,
true.
Isaac.
Yeah.
Gopher was actually my first crush.
Oh.
Is that true?
And I think it was because his name was Gopher, and I was like, oh, I love animals. I was probably like 5, but
That's totally something
Gopher.
my girl would do, too.
Yeah.
Right? She'd be like, oh,
I love Gopher.
he likes small furry things, just like I do. Maybe he'll like me.
That's Scooter on the Muppet Show. Scooter's a gopher. And so I always had a sort of affinity for the same reason I like that he's a
Right?
gopher.
He was like the stage manager. I had an affinity for him, too, because I was like, oh, he
Gopher?
makes
What?
the show happen. It wouldn't work without Scooter.
Oh, and then you grew up to be a stage manager.
Exactly. Yeah.
You were inspired by Scooter.
Now all I need is glasses. Can I borrow your glasses? That'll be perfect. My favorite thing was when he I've got this transistor radio that I've got frozen to my arm.
Oh gosh, yes.
It's like such a stupid throwaway joke, but I love it so much.
They're not stupid throwaway jokes if you're referring to them 30 years later.
They're all planned. Jim Henson
still-
in the writer's
you're
room was
still
like,
talking about 'em.
well, we just got to super glue this thing to his wrist and it'll be funny.
So many of those, you get me talking about Muppets, and we'll be here forever.
That's a whole
but,
other podcast.
so many of those
Muppets
things just
playing
feel like
D&D.
people playing around and being like, "Hey, wouldn't this be funny?"
Yeah.
What if we glued a transistor radio to
It
Scooter's
feels
wrist?
like kind of an accident. Like
Oh,
the
yeah.
glue wasn't dry on something else, and then it accidentally picked this out.
And it made them laugh on
that'll
set. They're
work.
like, sure, let's shoot it. And then we'll cut it in. Whatever. Who cares? It's the end of the movie. It's the epilogue anyway.
One day, 30 years from now, some guy's going to bring it up.
On a podcast.
It's going to resonate with someone.
Talking about Dungeons and Dragons and drag queens. I know he had a dream and it finally occurred.
At last, yes, the culmination of his vision.
Good for you, writer on the Great Muppet Caper.
Jerry Jewell.
One of my favorites.
Was that him?
That was Jerry Jewell. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Not on Caper, but on the show. Yeah, for sure.
Nice. That's all right. Pulling it from the vault. If you know the writers from
Yeah,
Muppets.
I was a Muppet fan.
I know,
Not
right?
that much.
All right. Now we do have to do a whole nother podcast on the Muppets.
Oh my God.
We'll get Matt Cernan in here. I know he's a big Muppets fan, so that'd
We
be
need
perfect.
to get the Muppets playing D&D.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, who would be?
Can
the
they
party?
be in the musical?
Yes, let's bring it all. Bring it all home.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Oh my God, there's like glitter
You
in
see,
my
like,
eyes.
Yeah,
right
I
Miss
got like 4
Piggy.
light bulbs going off.
Oh my God.
Hi.
I feel like
She's a
Kermit
monk.
would be the DM.
She's clearly a monk. Miss
'Cause she
Piggy's a
does
monk. I
her
think I actually
karate.
saw a list recently where someone did like what character class
Really?
mapped to each one of the Muppets. Animal's a barbarian.
Yeah,
Well,
he
yeah,
totally
for
would be.
Sam the Eagle's a paladin.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah. He's all about like
What
being
about
respectable.
Fozzie?
Bard probably. Well, you'd want to make all of them bards, but
I feel like the piano guy.
Yeah, Rolf
he
was
would
the
be a
bard.
Yeah.
For sure.
yeah.
Fozzie though?
Fozzie,
He's the comedian, right?
Yeah, he's a comedian, entertainer. So,
Waka Waka.
Gonzo?
I mean, would he have hideous
he was like-
laughter as a?
Yeah, he was like the warlock. I think Gonzo was a warlock.
Oh, I can see that.
That makes
For
total
sure.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chaotic neutral.
Yeah.
Dr. Bunsen Honeydew is, of course, the wizard.
Yep. That works.
Learned.
Yeah.
That works.
Yeah. I don't know what Beaker would be, though.
Beaker.
Familiar?
Yeah. Oh, I like that. Yes, yes. He's conjured up, and then he has 1 hit point because he's always getting.
Yeah, exactly. But he's always there to help. All right, good stuff. I think we're good. I feel like we could talk forever about Muppets. So you have to come back and let us know,
please.
Dragon Muppets.
Yep, Muppets and Drag.
So yeah, you got your show coming up in July in San Francisco.
San Francisco.
And is that going to be added to the podcast feed, you said?
Yep. So tickets for that are on sale. They're at queensofadventure.com. The podcast is at Queens of Adventure. You can listen and subscribe there.
I will.
And we're on Twitter, of course. So you can find Queens of Adventure on Twitter. Yeah, and so that's
when's the next show in Seattle?
We're looking hopefully at doing one a little bit later around the end of the summer. Nothing's like cast in stone yet, but we've got plans coming up for lots more live shows here.
We're going.
Nice. We're going.
We're going.
Nice.
Get a sitter.
Get a lip sync song ready.
All right.
Just in case there's an audience.
Pull you up to lip sync.
I'll do it.
Ooh,
oh my God.
He can do it. He's the DM, so it's perfect. It'll work. Awesome. What about you? How can people follow you personally as well?
So it's just my name on Twitter, Matt Baume, MattBaume. You can find me there. I also live stream a whole bunch. It's me and my partner. Twitch.tv/prettyprettypixel is our Twitch stream. And yeah, probably Twitter's the best way to find me. And of course, you can find us through Queens of Adventures. All of our information is on there as well.
Queensofadventure.com. Okay.
All right. Love it. Thank you so much for coming by.
Thanks so much for having me here.
Yeah, this was fun.
Absolutely.
Sweet.
Yay.
See ya.
Yay.
Bye.
Yay. I'm so excited.
We'll stay on with the Twitch for a second here.
Hello, the Twitch.
Hello, the Twitch people. How are you this fine day? That was it. That's all we needed to record, I think, today. So we're going to do our intros and outros after we say goodbye to Matt. But we have a lot of fun stuff coming down for Dungeons & Dragons. And let me get it up here so you can actually get some of it in front of you as soon as my computer is good to go. But tonight we have Dark and Dicey, which is at 7 p.m. Pacific time. Yes, thank you, Pelham. I just changed my password today, so.
Oh, I have to do that.
So it's like, what is that thing that I gotta do again? Some fun stuff. The Roll20 has the Character Mancer, which is launched. It is out now. You can make your character in there. Go check it out if you are playing Roll20, or even if you're not. It's a good way to do it, and you can get the Player's Handbook there. We announced Adventures Outlined. Have you seen this?
No.
It is a D&D coloring book with line drawings by Todd James, this graffiti artist, and it looks amazing, and I can't wait for it to come out.
Adam Lee do some wordy bits?
Yeah, so there's the line drawing that you can color in with D&D monsters dramatized on one side, and then the other side, Adam Lee, who is a writer here at Dungeons & Dragons, did like a snippet of text kind of explaining what is happening on the other side, or having like
in his Adam Lee-ish way.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of semi-poetic, pulling on like one or two details from the drawing, and then making them. It's basically like a D&D thing where you're like, oh, here's an image and I'm going to interpret it into a Dungeons & Dragons story. Good stuff. That's coming out on August 21st. If you're going to San Diego Comic-Con, you might be able to check out Todd James there. So go check it out at the store. It's called Bait. And he will be there doing signings all weekend long at San Diego Comic-Con in preparation for coming out on August 21st. And then, of course, at the Stream of Many Eyes, we mentioned Waterdeep Dragon Heist, which will be coming out September 9th in game stores and September 18th everywhere else. And then, of course, Dungeon of the Mad Mage is coming on its heels in November 2nd in game stores, which is all about Undermountain and Halaster Blackcloak and all the terrible things that go on underneath there. We also, sorry if I want to get these all out just before we close off here. Endless Quest books. Did you ever read the Endless Quest books? What about Choose Your Own Adventure books?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah. So these are basically Choose Your Own Adventure books, but in Dungeons & Dragons form.
Perfect.
And some of them are set in Waterdeep, telling stories about what's happening in that city. Class-based, so I think there's 4 of them out there now, so you can pick up.
I love.
Yeah, right. So you're like, I'm going to play a fighter, so I'm going to go through this storyline and go through it, right? And they're written by Matt Forbeck, who is amazingly prolific author, including writing all the text for Dungeonology, that book that came out a couple years ago, pop-up book all about Forgotten Realms stuff. He wrote these. They're fantastic. As I said, there's 4 of them. Escape the Underdark, which is the fighter one. To Catch a Thief, which is the rogue one. Into the Jungle, cleric, and Big Trouble, which is the wizard one.
Big Trouble.
Big Trouble. Those are coming out on September 4th. That's not a 4. That's 4. That's just the goat horns. I'm just rocking and rolling. You mess with a bull. And then today is the last day that you can purchase a D&D Pride shirt or a Magic Prime shirt to benefit the Lambert House. I'm just blown away by how well this fundraising campaign for the Lambert House has been received. We've raised more than $100,000 just for the D&D shirt alone.
Really?
It's
just
fantastic.
For the D&D one?
Just for the D&D shirt. Yeah, I know. And so it's fantastic. Lambert House is a great charity that supports LGBTQ youth all year round with tons of programs. So all of the funds that go towards these shirts are going to that house, which is fantastic. And it's a really cool shirt with a very oversized, I don't have it, I'm not wearing it right now, but the oversized rainbow ampersand. Good stuff. You have until today. So if you haven't picked up one yet, do it now. And it'll give you some pride in your heart. That's a lot of the big ones that I want to make sure everybody knew about today. I want to make sure I said the Lambert House one because it is today that they were last time they'll be able to
And
see
that's
it.
an amazing amount of money.
Yeah, right?
So, good job.
It's good stuff, right?
Yeah.
All right, great. Well, thanks everybody for watching this live recording of Dragon Talk. This episode should go up. I don't think it'll be this Thursday, but I think it'll be next Thursday. Yeah, it'll be fantastic out there. So stay tuned for Dark and Dicey this evening at 7 p.m. And then we'll be back tomorrow for a whole bunch of other Dungeons & Dragons programming, including Mike Merle's doing his Happy Fun Hour. It'll be a vodcast of Dragon Plus. I'll be back at 3:30 with D&D News, and then we'll get into Dice Camera Action, episode 99.
Whoa.
There's some really fun stuff on the horizon for Dice Camera Action, which I can only imagine.
Episode 100? Are they going to do something
maybe
special?
Maybe just for you.
Or for everybody?
For everybody, but you know,
really?
They're going to do it for you first, right?
Okay.
Yeah. No, it is really exciting. But you'll find out about it tomorrow, not today. All right. Thanks, you guys. We'll be back. You can follow me on Twitter at Greg Tito. Shelly Moo is also there.
Yep.
I was listening to some other podcast, and the host basically just said the other person's Twitter handle. I was like, oh, I should just do that instead of making you do it. Right?
It's like ordering for me in a restaurant.
It is a little bit like that, too. It was John August and Craig Mazin. Remember when we had them on from Script Notes?
Yes.
I was listening to them, and he's like, oh, and he's C.L. Mazin. And I was like, oh, that seems like he's just...
It's fine.
I feel like you want to, as a host, you want to let other people talk and say what they want to do.
Do whatever you want. What feels natural to you.
Now I'm just going to have to go do
talking over me feels natural.
Yeah, just be yourself.
Just
you be you, Greg.
As long as you're not hurting anyone, you're fine. I think that's it. We're going to close on out. Thank you, guys. You're the best. I'm not going to talk over Shelly anymore. So go ahead, Shelly. You can talk now.
You're the best. Rocks fall. Oh!